All right, good evening. We're going to call this meeting of the HPC South Orange into session. We'll start off with the meeting notice statement. Adequate notice of this meeting had been provided to the press in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-6. In addition, notice of this meeting was posted in the Village Hall and on the Village website and has been filed in the office of the Village Clerk. Official action may be taken. With that, can you call roll, Kathy?
Yes, I will call the roll. Chairman Hill.
Here.
Commissioner Langzum.
Here.
Vice Chair Barnett.
Here.
Commissioner Don.
Here.
Commissioner Marlowe.
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Carter.
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Mon.
Here.
Thank you.
Before we begin, I just would like to, for the benefit of the public, give some rules of procedure how this evening is going to proceed. There's one case on the agenda, and I gather you're all here to hear and participate in that matter. And the way it will proceed is the applicant is going to put on witnesses in this case. I believe the applicant is going to ask that his witnesses this evening all testify before they stand en banc, all of them together, for cross-examination by any party here tonight that would like to do that. That will be your opportunity to come up and ask the witnesses that are going to be presented this evening questions. It's not your opportunity to make statements, but rather to ask questions that relate to the testimony that you're going to hear from these witnesses. Later in the proceedings, after the applicant has closed his case, all of you will be given an opportunity to come once again to the podium and make statements. So just to be clear, the first opportunity you have to step to the podium is simply to ask questions, not to make statements. So we ask that you refrain from making such statements. Want to call the case?
Call the case, all right.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Janine Bauer, and I'm going to be representing the objectors tonight. Evan Levy and Kate Ladding and Sean and Sharon Pigeon, who are the adjacent property owners to the applicant. We have an objection with respect to the public notice. We disagree that adequate notice of this meeting was given because under the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice is defined as, and I'm reciting from 10:4-8-D. Adequate notice means a written advance notice of at least 48 hours, giving the time, date, location, and, to the extent known, the agenda of any regular, special, or rescheduled meeting, which notice shall accurately state whether formal action may or may not be taken, and so on and so forth. There was no agenda for this given in the either on the village website. A further provision of the Open Public Meetings Act allows for electronic notice. That's 10:4-9.1. However, it doesn't modify the fact that an agenda must be posted at least 48 hours in advance, in addition to the fact that the agenda is still not, as of today, on the village website. There's nothing downstairs posted outside of the clerk's office on the bulletin board where all notices are posted other than the regular annual calendar notice. It says nothing about the agenda or this public hearing for tonight. And the notice that went out, the public hearing notice that went out to the 200-foot property owners did describe this. So the commission was well aware that this hearing on this application was going to take place. In fact, a public hearing as well as the application. Public hearing, of course, being part of this application. And that is not posted anywhere either in this village, nor was it sent to the newspapers, which it's required to be done under the Open Public Meetings Act. There was no other notice to the public other than the notice that was sent to the sort of like historic preservation groups that this body determined to do a couple months ago. And because, notwithstanding the fact that the objectors have made great efforts to canvass the neighborhood and in fact have hundreds of names on petitions, the fact of the matter is there is deficient public notice. In addition, Your own rules and the minutes from the last meeting say that the application itself and all supporting materials will be available 10 days in advance. They were not available. We made an Oprah request. We got them Monday. And only after I pointed out to the clerk that we didn't need to make an Oprah request because the public notice itself says that they're going to be available, and they were not available. So I'd like a ruling on that.
Okay, I can't address that right now. I note your appearance. Let's call the case, and we'll hear from the applicant here in a moment.
Well, I'd like a ruling on it from the commission.
Excuse me?
I'd like a ruling on it from the commission.
We're not ready to rule on that until we hear the applicant.
Well, if there's not adequate public notice, how can the application go forward?
On this issue. Yeah, I'm going to call the case. I think I still haven't called it yet.
Nope. All right. Now, order of new business. We're hearing applicant case Marylon, case number 2013-01.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for the record, my name is Michael J. Gross of the law firm of Giordano, Halloran, and Ciesla, representing Marylon of the Oranger School. We did provide notice to 200-foot owners. We published a notice. We did Federal Express the proof of notice to the clerk yesterday, so it should have been received today, and we'd like the board to take jurisdiction based on that notice.
Yeah, I understand that, and I have reviewed your notice, and I find that compliant. However, would you address this issue of the open public meeting notice, which is, I think, what council has addressed here, that the agenda was not included in the notice, and for that reason, she is alleging that the public meeting notice was defective.
Well, our notice did not have to include an
Understood.
agenda. As a matter of fact, the ordinance doesn't even require this type of notice, but we gave them the MLU notice because we recognize that your rules require it.
No, I understand that.
I'm not prepared to address the issue because I was not given the courtesy of a call prior to this meeting indicating that council would even be appearing and will be raising this issue. It's not our obligation to provide the open public meetings notice, so I'm not really prepared to address
Understood. No,
that.
I understand it's not your,
Right.
it's not your obligation, and I hear you that you did not get the courtesy of a call in
Right.
advance. I understand that. But can you address the jurisdiction of this board in the absence of an agenda in the notice? That's the question that council is raising.
Well, I believe that our notice is sufficient
We understand that.
to provide the interested parties with the notice of the agenda.
But the question is are there not two notices that are required? One of the meeting itself and one of the applicant indicating what the nature of the matter is that to be heard?
Right, there's an open public meetings notice. I haven't seen the notice that was posted, so I can't comment on it.
I must say, I haven't seen it either. Do we have a copy of it here?
Of the agenda or the notice? I think Robin probably posted the notice earlier on when she did all the calendar for the year.
Do you have
I believe the
council?
clerk has the notice.
I did not bring, I believe it's in that box, but I didn't bring it in a folder marked notice, so I would have to look through that. But I have read the notice. But the point is, the notice was not posted downstairs. It was not posted electronically on the village website. It still is not, and it was not sent to the newspaper. And this is a commission, which is a public body under the Open Public Meetings Act. And under the Open Public Meetings Act,
No,
the notice was
that's
not adequate.
No, I would like to see, before we rule on your motion, I'd like to see a copy of the notice for this meeting.
I believe that when the village clerk published the meeting dates, this was one of the meeting dates, so I'm uncertain as to whether a special notice
Oh,
needs to be
should-
included. We noticed the special meeting of July 1st outside of the meetings posted
okay.
at the beginning and the commencement of the commission.
And so
that's
this-
what's posted
Yeah, okay.
downstairs.
And this is a regular scheduled
This is a
meeting?
regular meeting,
Okay.
correct.
Can you
It specifically...
address the issue that this is a
Sure.
regularly scheduled meeting? So I don't believe that an agenda is necessary if we're hearing a matter on a regularly scheduled meeting.
It says adequate notice means written advance notice of at least 48 hours giving the time, date, location, and to the extent known, the agenda of any regular, special, or rescheduled meeting. So that
Okay.
includes
So,
regular
yeah.
meeting.
At the time this meeting was published, the agenda wasn't known. This is one of the meetings that was published for the full year, and at that point in time, you don't know all the matters that you're going to hear at any particular date in the future, and so it wasn't known at the time of publication. And I'm going to rule that the notice is adequate.
Mr. Rutherford, just let me explain the applicant's position. We would not want to jeopardize this entire proceeding if there was a defective open public meetings notice.
I understand.
So if there was, we would say, let's adjourn
Yep.
the hearing. As I said, I can't comment on it because I'm really not prepared to do so.
Now, I'm hearing from the board secretary that this meeting is a regularly scheduled meeting that was a part of the annual notice that was made, and at the time that that annual notice was published, the agenda could not have been known, and for that reason, we can proceed with this case. Every land use board publishes its annual schedule of meetings and does not include, and could not possibly include, a list of all the matters they're going to hear because they're publishing those notices in advance, and there's no obligation to republish once you know what the agenda is. And for that reason, I'm going to suggest to the board that this objection be overruled. Okay.
This hearing is pursuant to your ordinance 2012-09 and also a March 4, 2013 condition of a resolution of the planning board which approved a minor site plan and a soil removal permit.
Before you
site.
start, council, could we take care of a couple of housekeeping matters? Sure. As I said earlier, I reviewed your notice and I find it in order. And that this board has his jurisdiction as a result of that. I noticed that you have a stenographer with you this evening.
Correct.
Is it your desire to have the stenographic record that may be made here the official record? Because normally our official record will be the video recording that's taking place right now.
I think for ease of reference, it's much better that the stenographic record be the official record.
I would ask you to stipulate only one thing if we're going to consent to this being the stenographer's record being the official record, that should for any reason one of these members not be able to sit through all of the testimony and have to review the record in order to vote, that we would be able to have that commissioner view the video, or if you didn't want that to happen, that you would provide a copy of the transcript so that it could be read.
At the commissioner's pleasure, yes.
Okay. With that stipulation, I would suggest to the chair that we accept as the official record the stenographer's record that's going to be prepared.
Do you think a motion?
You don't. You can just agree to it.
I agree.
Okay. You would like to make an opening statement at this point in time?
Yes, please.
Okay.
As I indicated, this hearing is pursuant to the Municipal Ordinance 2012-09 and Condition 3 of the March 4, 2013 resolution of the Planning Board, which approved a minor site plan and soil removal application. We make this application without waiving our position in litigation that we have filed and has been stayed by mutual agreement of all the parties, without waiving our position, attacking the ordinance and attacking the condition within the resolution. Let me state very clearly at the outset that our preferred disposition of this property would be for this building, the Mary Lawn building, to remain standing. That has been the sisters' position consistently from the outset. If, in fact, and we'll talk about this in a minute, there can't be an approval granted that would save the building, then we think there's no alternative but to demolish the building under your ordinance. Probably the worst-kept secret in South Orange is that there have been negotiations between the sisters and Seton Hall University. We have not signed an agreement with Seton Hall University, but if we should sign such an agreement, and if we receive approval from this commission to demolish the building, we would stipulate that no demolition would occur until the Seton Hall planning applications, whatever they may be, are terminated one way or the other. So that we do not want to forestall the opportunity to save the building if indeed we do sign an agreement with Seton Hall and Seton Hall determines as a result of their applications to the zoning or planning board that they would like to salvage the building, which we hope they do. We, as council indicated, we would like to present our 3 witnesses this evening and then open them up for cross-examination. There's a 4th witness, a builder, who could not make it tonight. I discussed that with Mr. Relder. Obviously, we would ask that the hearing be continued to a date in the future when that witness can be available to testify, and we would ask that at the termination of the proceedings tonight, the board set another hearing date, announce that date so we do not have to notice again. As I said, we have 3 witnesses. The first witness I'd like to call is Damon Tarianis.
Would you, for the benefit of the chair, indicate the number of witnesses you're going to produce and the length of time you think it might take, just to be certain that we will have them all available this evening still for some cross-examination?
Yes.
And one other thing, if you call them all for cross-examination as a group, that if the cross-examination isn't finished this evening, that you will bring them back again to finish cross-examination?
Yes, we'll agree to that. There are 3 witnesses. I estimate that they should take between a half hour and 45 minutes.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I recommend that you approve that procedure, to give them the brief number of witnesses and that we can get through them this evening.
Okay, approved.
Thank you. I'd like to call Mr. Tarianis. You swear him in?
Okay. Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name for the record and your address. Spell your name, please.
Damon Tarianis. My first name's D-A-M-O-N. Last name's Tarianis, T-V-A-R-Y-A-N-A-S. And my address is, do you want me to repeat the last name?
Pardon?
Would you like me to repeat my last name?
Your last name, yes, I did.
Yes, I thought so. It's T-V-A-R-Y-A-N-A-S. Sorry.
Okay.
And the address is 119 Hillside Road, West Hampton, New Jersey.
Now, Mr. Tarianis, I'd like to try to qualify you as a historic preservation consultant. Can you please provide the board with your education first?
I have an undergraduate degree from NYU with a concentration in fine arts, which is really architectural history. The vast majority of courses were architectural history. And I have a Master's of Science degree from the University of Pennsylvania in historic preservation.
Can you relate your work experience starting with your present position, please?
I'm currently the principal senior historian with Richard Grubb and Associates in Cranbury, New Jersey. Historic preservation and archaeological consulting firm that does a lot of work throughout the Mid-Atlantic.
And what are your responsibilities within that firm?
Oversight of projects, review of staff. I review all architectural and historical projects for technical sufficiency and make sure that the work of the research and the reporting that was done is up to what's required generally by state rate and other regulations.
And what was your employment experience immediately prior to the Grubb employment?
I worked for 13 or 14 years for Hunter Research Inc., which is a company headquartered in Trenton, New Jersey, which does more or less the same kind of work. And I had a similar set of responsibilities there.
And prior to that?
Prior to that, I did some private consulting. And I think that kind of generally sums it up.
Do you have any academic experience?
Academically, I guess, you could, I'm sorry. My primary experience is that I ran a historic preservation program at the Burlington County College for a number of years, for 2 or 3 years, and also taught a few classes for them as well.
And have you published in the field?
I have published a number of publications, some articles in journals, some individual standalone documents, and a couple of articles in books.
And have you testified before other historic preservation commissions in the state of New Jersey? And have you been accepted as an expert in historic preservation?
Yes, I have testified before the Bedminster Township Historic Preservation Commission in Somerset and before the Lawrence Township Historic Commission in Mercer County.
I'd like to offer Mr. Terrianis as an expert in historic preservation.
Approved.
Thank you.
Could I have one here, please?
Certainly.
Thank you. Mr. Terrianis,
Yes.
can you explain to the board what project you were accepted as an expert on in Bedminster and Lawrence Township?
In Bedminster, it was it was in testimony with regard to the proposed extension of an existing village historic district where they wanted to capture additional properties along the boundaries of that district to create basically a buffer zone. And in Lawrence Township, although it's been a while, I can't remember the name of the house, primarily it was with regard to the proposed demolition of a mid-19th century large residence that was on the property of a pharmaceutical company.
And in the Lawrence Township case, the proposed demolition of a large residence on the pharmaceutical company property, were you testifying on behalf of the applicant to demolish the property or on behalf of the any objectors or the township seeking preservation or preservation alternatives?
It was on behalf of the objectors.
And have you written, you said that you've published some articles in journals and also written a couple articles in books. Did I understand that correctly?
You did?
Did any of them have to do with demolition of a property of the era of the application tonight?
None of them directly address demolition activities. No, I'm more, what I've published, well, I should say, is more in the field of architectural history and in archaeological natures than my published documents are in, let's say, the preservation regulatory aspect.
Do any of your articles address integrity?
No, not specifically the subject of integrity, no.
Do any of your articles address significance?
I have not addressed significance within the boundaries of National Register or local designation within any of my published documents, but I certainly have addressed the issue of certain historic resources and why they possess historic significance and why, based on architectural reasons and based on historical reasons, why they are significant.
Have you written articles or published articles having to do with why certain properties do not possess significance?
No, I have not.
And the responsibility for the oversight of projects which you described in your current position, does that primarily deal with preservation on the architectural side or even the archaeological side, or does it deal with some other subject?
Most of the work we do involve regulatory compliance. My supervisory role is primarily in the fields of architectural history and history. The archaeology, I'm not a trained archaeologist, but I do frequently find myself in the situation where I'm serving as a project manager on projects that involve both architectural history, and archaeology. So I'd be supervising trained and qualified archaeologists.
And when you say regulatory compliance, I think that you said for 13 or 14 years while you were at Hunter Research, you had a similar set of responsibilities. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Mr. Terrianis, when I looked at the Richard Grubb Associates website, and of course I'm familiar with your firm,
Sure.
I interpret a regulatory compliance, so tell me whether I'm correct or not, especially with respect to your governmental clients, meaning, for instance, New Jersey Department of Transportation, Delaware DOT, and so on and so forth, as meeting the requirements of Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act or the state counterpart prior to either the demolition, removal, or some adverse effect that a particular project will have on an historic structure or district. Is that what you mean by regulatory compliance?
That represents a very substantial, if not the majority, of our work, but we also do state-level regulatory compliance in New Jersey, for instance, under freshwater wetland permitting, under also waterfront development permitting, but we also do work under local ordinances as well, too, although it's much less frequent because there's much less of market for it, I suppose.
But it's fair to say that your work involves much more demolition, removal, or adverse effects on historic properties than preservation. Isn't that correct?
I would actually say, as far as demolition goes, it's relatively infrequent. Adverse effect and its technical definition under Section 106, which are federal regulations, are fairly common, but an adverse effect can be fairly minimal. It's just anything, I mean, I can go into the technical definition, but more or less anything that can denigrate a property's ability to meet the National Register of Historic Preservation, not limit or remove its abilities, but just reduce its ability would be
Counsel,
considered an adverse
can we
effect.
move this along a little bit?
Sure.
We see where you're going.
I'm almost finished. Have you ever proposed any properties for the National or State Register and had them accepted?
Yes.
Which properties were they?
Most recently, I did a National Register Historic District for over about 12 to 1,500 properties in the southern section of the city of Trenton, which was formally listed this year. I've also worked in Pennsylvania National Register nominations, once again for historic districts. That one dealt with the Mill Creek Historic District in Lower Merion.
And who was your client in the southern section of Trenton?
The client was the Trenton Historical Society. Before I was involved with that group, I did the consulting for it. And then it was the Lower Merion Conservancy when I worked for the, when I completed that work in Pennsylvania.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. We agree that, if I pronounce your name wrong, Terrianis is a
Yes.
historic preservation consultant. Expert.
You've accepted. Thank you very much. Mr. Terrianis, when were you first contacted to evaluate the Mary Lawn building, the subject of this hearing?
We were initially contacted concerning the project in March. Actually, project is not quite the right word, but concerning the building in March, and then I did a site visit in April
Okay, this is
of this year, 2013.
And are you familiar with the Montrose Historic District?
I have driven the streets of the district. I've read the National Register nomination for the district. I wouldn't say I am as intimately familiar as a local resident would be, but I understand the basic parameters of the district.
And do you have a map that shows the extent of the district?
Sure, certainly. It's right there. Do I need to get up the point?
Sure. Well, you've got to speak into the microphone, so you're going to have a problem.
Can we have the exhibit marked,
Yes.
please? Let's mark it A1 as of this date, if you would, please.
While she's marking it, I mean,
Let's let her mark it because she can't type while she's marking.
sorry.
That's right. I'm correct that he can't speak from the exhibit because he won't be speaking into the microphone. Am I correct?
Can you stand over there?
If that's
Yeah.
not the official record.
Well,
however-
we could hold it over here. If we could put the easel over here and you
Okay.
could stand on the, at the
Sure.
podium, that would probably be the best way to do it. That way this board could see the exhibit and he would have a microphone.
Good. Mr. Tarianis, can you just describe first what that exhibit is?
It's basically a map that's been produced using a modern aerial photograph, the most modern available, from the NJDEP website with the New Jersey Historic Preservation Office's GIS layer showing the boundaries of historic properties and historic districts overlaid over the top of it. Actually, this one just shows historic districts. It doesn't identify individual historic properties.
Now, we probably all know what NJDEP means, but just for the record.
New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection.
And on that aerial photograph, are there markings, and can you describe what those are and what they represent?
Sure. On this particular graphic, I had a couple of the key landmarks of the district, only really the most recognizable and important things sort of called out. The Mountain Railroad Station, Grove Park, the Old Stone House, and Mary Lawn of the Oranges, although I must say that what's actually been highlighted in white there as the boundaries is actually the school and not the Mary Lawn house itself. The house is immediately to the south of the school.
And there's also a boundary shown. What is that?
That is the boundary of the National Register listed property. It was basically, according to the justification contained in the nomination, it was drawn more or less to encompass the boundaries of the district to the edge of the railroad, to South Orange Avenue to the south, and it utilized municipal boundaries more or less to define the remaining northern and eastern sections of the district. There are pieces cut in and out of the edges in order to avoid taking in non-contributing properties into the boundaries of the district.
And how large is the district?
I believe there is a slight discrepancy. The National Register nomination says something slightly in excess of 400 acres. When you actually map it out on GIS, the computer says it's like 365.
But between 365 and 400.
It's immaterial, the difference.
Okay.
Yes.
How many buildings are within the district?
Total buildings approximately 1,200, I believe.
And did you evaluate, as part of your retainage, the significance of the Mary Lawn building?
Yes, I did.
And what, first of all, what was your conclusion with respect to the significance and then the basis for your conclusion?
Well, my conclusion was, from review of the building, that the building certainly does retain its original massing, its basic shape, its basic forms. It would qualify as a contributing resource within the historic district. I think a reasonable expert could go one way or another as to whether it's a key contributing element to the district. It's certainly a large and impressive building, but there has been some fairly substantial changes to it, which has reduced its integrity somewhat. But it certainly qualifies as a contributing building within the historic district.
Did you evaluate the condition of the building from a historical perspective?
From a historic standpoint, it has had some alterations. As I said before, basically the primary outline, the massing all remains the same. It does display some original materials, certainly in the stonework that's visible on the bottom. It's lost its original shingling at the top. There's been some window replacements on the outside, and then there's been some modifications and changes over time, both to the building itself and to its original setting, which, at once upon a time was a completely large and open lot with a large carriage house at the back. The new school building was built next door in the 1950s, and the carriage house has been lost. These are things which do diminish the building's integrity, but as I said, its essential character, which is necessary to qualify it as a contributing building, is still intact.
And have you evaluated what measures would have to be taken to rehabilitate the building to make it livable?
Well, from a basic use standpoint, from seeing the interior, there's been a lot of things that were done to the building in order to make it suitable for an institutional use. That transference from a large private residence to an institutional use. A lot of the interior spaces were subdivided up. There's been a lot of modifications to the interior. Over time, there's also been a loss of a considerable amount of original interior set fabric. A bunch still survives, but elements such as the staircase banisters, many of the mantles, a lot of other fabric has been lost. There would need to be, if we're looking at restoration or rehabilitation to use as a private residence, there need to be a number of changes to the interior, which would be fairly substantial. Obviously, it's the removal of a lot of these partitions, which, as I said, and there's a substantial amount of them. From my viewpoint, I think looking at it for its use as a modern building, one of the most substantial changes which would need to be made is that when originally constructed in 1900, this building was constructed as a large residence for a very wealthy individual, and included, as was typical in the time, a basement kitchen, a very large basement kitchen. For modern usage, I don't think you're not going to have anyone who's going to likely to come in and purchase this building with a large servant staff. They're not going to want to have their kitchen in the basement. I think you probably have to move that kitchen up to the first floor, which would involve a very substantial reorientation, reworking of the room arrangement on that floor.
And is the fact that the building is set vacant for a period of time, does it make it more difficult to rehabilitate the building?
Buildings begin to deteriorate fairly quickly once they're vacant. Now, with this building, the basic shell still appears reasonably intact, but there has been deterioration, and as time continues to pass, that will certainly increase.
Now, you mentioned an institutional use. Can you describe your understanding of what the use has been?
My understanding is that in 1935, it passed out of the Graves family and was used as a school. And then when the new school building was built in the 1950s, it primarily became residence for the faculties of that school.
Now, I do have 4 photographs here that I'd like to mark, and I'd like to have the witness identify and testify to. Can we just mark them and then he'll identify them?
Sure, and just sequentially mark them A2 and so on as of this date.
Now, I apologize for not having these mounted in large size, but it just wasn't feasible.
And they've been marked A2 through what do we have there?
5.
You have 5 of them?
No, A2 through A5,
A5,
yes.
okay.
Now, Mr. Tariano, showing you A2, can you please identify that photograph?
Yes, it's the street facade of Mary Lawn. It shows, as I discussed earlier, that the building does retain its basic form. It shows that stonework I talked about, but it also shows how a lot of the street front fenestration has been changed and modified in some ways. But it gives a good idea of the overall street presence of the view, which from the standpoint of a local ordinance is usually the most important aspect of the building.
And A3, can you identify that?
A3 shows what's known as the ballroom, which is certainly one of the most impressive interior spaces. It's obviously had some changes to finish over the time period, but basically it's probably the best preserved overall room within the building and retains the most complete interior fabric.
And A4?
A4 is an illustration of the second floor hallway, the primary hallway, which shows the current 2x4s, which are replacing the missing main staircase banister.
And that's the banister you referred to in your prior testimony?
It is.
Okay. And A5?
A5 is an interior space on the first floor, which shows how both there is a mixture in there of surviving original historic detailing and also the loss of historic fabric and the loss of the primary mantelpiece in the room.
Can you be more specific?
As to the surviving fabric, the nicely detailed wainscoting that's visible on the walls, the boxed beams, or probably faux boxed wooden beams on the ceiling. However, I do not believe that that floor covering is original, and the doorway surrounds are original, although the architrave over the top of one is missing.
Mr. Gross, is the witness going to testify further from these photos?
He is not. Would you like to?
Could you pass them around
Sure.
the board so that the board can have the benefit of seeing them
Absolutely.
before, and when it's passed around the board, could we hand it to Council Bauer so that she can see it as well?
Were these the photos that were submitted with the application?
Yeah, they're representative photos that were submitted with the application. yes.
If that's the case, then we all have copies of those, and why don't we
Okay.
just pass those to Council Bauer so that she can have those, have a look at those.
Now, Mr. Tarianis, you're aware of the fact that this application is for a certificate of appropriateness to demolish the Mary Lawn building.
Yes, I am.
And did you analyze the impact on the Montrose Historic District of the proposed demolition of the building?
Yes, I did.
And what was the result of this analysis?
Certainly, the building is, as I said, it's a contributing building to the district, and there's no way to state that it's not going to be a loss to the overall historic district if the building is diminished, it is lost. However, the district is large enough that the loss of this building will not substantially diminish its abilities to qualify for the National Register, as I suggested, which are the primary guidelines used in these types of situations, even though its designation in this case is actually on the local municipal level.
And so, in terms of the eligibility of the district, you've issued a conclusion as to the impact of the demolition of this building?
The impact of this building is not going to substantially alter the eligibility of the larger district one way or another.
Now, based upon your analysis of the condition of the building, do you have an opinion as to whether it's practical to rehabilitate the building for single-family use?
For single-family use, I'm once again not qualified as a real estate expert, but from looking at the building and from my...
The objection is noted.
Okay. I would imagine that it would be very difficult and very expensive, given the current market, the size of the building, and the amount of work that's needed, that it would be unlikely that someone would want to rehabilitate this particular building as a single-family residence.
I have no other questions of Mr. Tarianis, so I'm going to call Mr. Thomas Cupo.
Sure.
Can you swear in the witness, please?
Sure. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Would you state your name and spell it for the record and give us your address, please?
Thomas A. Cupo, C-U-P-O, 50 Mount Prospect Avenue, Clifton, New Jersey.
Mr. Cupo, what is your profession?
I'm a real estate broker and developer.
And can you please give us your background in terms of education,
We can't hear
experience?
him.
I'm sorry.
We can't hear him.
Let me repeat the question. What is your profession, Mr. Cupo?
A real estate developer and marketing.
He needs to speak into the microphone
sorry.
because for the recording.
Go ahead.
I mean, the real estate marketing and development business.
And can you give us your background in terms of education, experience, and professional certifications?
Yes, I graduated from the University of Bridgeport with a BA degree in marketing. I'm a licensed real estate broker since 1965. I'm a licensed insurance broker since 1962. I developed, built, and managed and marketed approximately 750 residential units throughout the northern New Jersey area. I developed, built, and rehabilitated commercial office space, industrial space, and retail space, approximately 600,000 square feet. And we've sales and we've marketed millions of dollars of real estate within the New Jersey and New York area. I served on the city council in the city of Clifton for 8 years. I served on their planning board for 6 years. I was a member of the committee who was part of the redevelopment of the Botany Village in the city of Clifton, which was a very extensive project that involved about 40 or 50 acres of old buildings that were rehabilitated.
And I'd like to qualify Mr. Cupo as a real estate expert.
Agreed.
I don't know.
Mr. Cupo, can you hear me?
Yes?
Among the marketing experience that you've described for single-family homes, how much of your experience was for single-family homes?
How many of my experience was with single-family homes?
Yeah, if you could give a percentage or a proportion.
Well, I'd say maybe 50% of it.
Okay, and how much of the real estate development and marketing experience which you described did that proportion represent? In other words, was 50% of everything that you just described that you did trying to sell single-family homes, or within marketing, 50% of it was selling single-family homes?
Just to clarify the point, is the 700 homes that I'm referring to were homes that we developed, we built, and we marketed. In addition to that, we have a sales organization that's sold and resold for resale houses and that type of thing. So the majority of these were all one family, two families, condominiums.
Okay, so how much of the work that you've done is marketing versus development? Can you answer that?
We did all the marketing and we did all the development. Naturally, I have a staff that works with me, but I had hands-on, if that's your question.
I understand. I'm just going to try this one more time. Could you put a percentage on how much of your past experience was marketing existing, not newly developed, existing single-family homes?
How much of my time was put into it, or how many houses we've sold? I don't know what your question is.
Any way you want to judge
Pardon?
it. Any way you want to judge it.
I work full-time with this. And I market whatever we have that we come into the office, and there's certain projects that I handle and certain projects other people handle. But I market single-family homes. As a matter of fact, the majority of these homes that we're talking about, two-family homes in the city of Clifton that we built, and we marketed.
Okay. I would note that I don't think that was responsive to my question. Let me move on to another question, and that is, how many of the existing single-family homes, not ones that you built and marketed, not the ones that you developed yourself and marketed, but how many of the existing single-family homes that you've sold would be considered luxury homes or high-end homes, mansions of the type that you see in the Montrose Park Historic District?
I can't give you a number, but I would guess 50.
50? 50 luxury single-family homes.
Of the type you're talking about, that we're talking about here, I guess, that's on Mary Ellen's property. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes. And where were these mansions that you marketed?
They were in the Clifton, area, in Fairfield, Wayne, in that area there.
Were any of them from the era that the that the convent, I'm going to refer to it as either the Graves Estate or the convent. I'm not going to call it Mary Lawn because to me that's the school. Okay, do you know what I mean by the Graves Estate or the convent?
Yes.
Okay. How many of the 50 or so luxury homes that you marketed in the Clifton area were from the era that the convent was built?
Can you just define era? Are you talking about something that is 75 years old?
Well, do you know what
I
year
can tell
it
you,
was
I just
built?
want to make it clear that if you're talking about 75 years old, let's start with the fact that I am 75, and I've been doing this since I'm 20. So everything I did was of that era. I mean, I took a farmhouse in the city of Clifton, and I moved it to a park, and I donated it to the city of Clifton, and the city created a historical commission such as this, who went out and raised the money to rehabilitate that building. In fact, and then I continued to develop the balance of the property with luxury townhouses. I mean, I don't know what your question is. I mean, I can't say to you that I have an identical building that resembles the one on Scotland that I ever sold. I mean, I've had buildings that were replicas of the Dye Mansion. Were they the Dye Mansion? No, but they were replicas of it that I've sold.
Okay. Mr. Kubo, I'm just going to try to be real simple, okay? I'm not talking about replicas, and I'm not talking about developments, and I'm not talking about properties that you moved and developed, and I'm not talking about any of the properties you developed. I'm talking about single-family homes that you agreed were mansions or luxury properties of the size and type that the convent is, and I'm asking you, did you sell any that were from that era? And by that era, I mean the era in which that property was built, the convent was built.
The convent was built 75 years ago.
The convent
And I've
was built
sold many houses
75
that were
years
built
ago?
75 years ago. I said to you before, I did not sell a building that was identical to that building that you're talking about.
I'm not asking about identity, I'm just on era, okay? So
He already answered.
Yeah,
He said-
I think we're going
Okay.
well beyond what typical voir dire would, but if you could wrap it up a little bit here.
Okay, I would disagree with that. But if it's your testimony that the convent is 75 years old and that you've sold mansions that are approximately 75 years old, then I'm done. Is that your testimony?
That the mansion is 75 years old.
And that you've sold mansions that are approximately 75 years old?
I've sold houses that you might refer to, mansions, large houses that are 75 and maybe 100 years old.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
We would ask that he be accepted.
We accept.
When were you first contacted by the sisters to market the subject property?
In April of 2008, we were contacted to estimate the fair market value of Lot 9, which is where the tennis courts sit on the property, and the rear half of Lot 3, where the old carriage house was, utility building was. When we were there, it was a boarded-up building that since has been demolished. We came back with a recommendation as to what we thought these two
Could you
pieces.
speak into the microphone?
I'm sorry.
Can you increase the volume of this microphone?
You just have to speak into it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
take
speak
your
directly
hand off.
into it. so we
Okay,
all can-
I'll hold it, I'm sorry. Again, if you would like me to start at the beginning, in April of 2008, we were contacted to come up with a fair market value, what the market value would be of Lot 9, which consists of the two tennis courts, and Lot 3, the rear part of it, where the carriage house stood. Not the building itself, not the convent, just those two pieces of property. We came back and we told them that we felt the value of those two pieces of property were $1,500,000. Separately, one was $700,000 and the other one was $800,000. Most of this information was gathered through a meeting with your appraiser in the city, right in South Orange, who was very cooperative. And we came up with this value, and we recommended that the building be demolished. It had no economic value, the rear building, and that if they were going to sell it, that anybody buying it would be buying it for the vacant land and not the building. It wasn't until 2010 when they came back to us and they decided to market the property, including the convent, and then we moved forward in analyzing what would be the highest and best use for that entire property. We hired a planner and an architect who works for us on a regular basis, but as an independent. And he went to town hall and discussed with some of the people and see what would be acceptable, realizing that the property is zoned for one-family houses. We asked him to lay out a subdivision of one-family houses with the convent and without the convent. He came back with 5 units, that five houses without if the convent wasn't there, it would be 5 houses, but they would still require some bulk variance of some sort, whatever it might have been, depending on the size of the houses. And if we left the convent up, it would be 4 units, and again, it would require side yard variances and subdivisions, and as the school encroaches on Lot 9, I guess if you're looking at it from the front on the left side, it encroaches on Lot 9. So that meant a subdivision, which was an irregular line.
And after that, did you start marketing the property?
Yes, we did.
And about when was that?
That was in September of 2010.
And what do you do to market the property?
Well, as I said before, we normally come up with what the property can be used for. We utilize LoopNet as an internet, as well as CoStar, and our own website. We advertise in all the major newspapers, such as the Star Ledger and the Bergen Record and the New York Times. We did go to other newspapers in the area, in Jersey City, and which was the Chinese World, a Korean newspaper, and an Indian newspaper, which we utilize because of the special purpose of this type of building, to see what kind of interest that we can have.
And were you successful in marketing the property?
We weren't successful in marketing the property as a one-family house, although we did make an effort to do that. We did advertise it as a mansion, an estate-type house. We were hoping that someone would come and would be interested in rehabbing the convent and building maybe 1 or 2 or 3 other homes on the property. As it turned out, everybody that came to us had a different idea what they'd like to do to the property. We had 3 contracts on the property. One was the L Group, which is a developer from Kearney, who started out by wanted to build residential apartments on the property. He put a little proposal together, including some renderings and other things. Entered into a contract with us. He was the only developer that was willing to keep the convent intact and try to renovate that and use it as a clubhouse or that type of thing. Unfortunately, once he started getting some of the pulse of the people in the community, he decided to cancel the contract, and we then moved on to...
I missed something that you said. Unfortunately, what? When he...
I said, unfortunately, he decided to cancel the contract.
He heard what? Why did he cancel? I thought you...
Because the pulse of the people.
Okay. Thank you.
And then we had a contract with Chase Partners, in September of 2011. This particular contract was very short-lived because they had visions of building 250 or 300 units on this property. And once they came to the town, they realized that they were going to get a great deal of resistance, and they canceled the contract within a couple of months after entering into it. And the last contract that we had was JMF Properties, which is Joseph Forgione. I think maybe some of you do know. He's done other developments in your community. I think he did the rehabilitation down the street here. And he had a reasonable project, being an 80-unit building. He met with some of the people informally, some of the people from your Melrose group, members, a few members of your council. I think the mayor attended one of the meetings. Maybe some of you people did. I don't remember all the names, but they gave him their input, and he revised it. But it still seemed to be, he still seemed to be receiving resistance. And although he still has an interest, he's canceled his contract as well.
Now, am I correct, you attempted to market the property including the existing building for single-family use?
Yes, we actually marketed it as a mansion.
To the mic when you ask a question.
Okay, sorry. And you indicated in response to one of my prior questions that you felt you were not successful in marketing the property as a single-family house. Why not, in your opinion?
In my opinion, in the house, the convent needed a very extensive amount of work. Not only was mentioned earlier, the kitchen was down in the basement, and it meant rehabbing that. Today, people want luxuries. Even though it appears as a two-story building, it's really 3 stories. People would have to either walk up to the 3rd floor for their bedrooms. The building has been renovated to be really just a large dormitory that housed the sisters through the years. They had 1 kitchen, and that was down in the basement. They had the 1st floor was used for just a sitting area and a chapel and that type of thing. But the building itself required an extensive amount of improvements, including the rear deck. Or if you look at the rear of the house, it has a very expansive deck, which would have to all be replaced. The basement was all reinforced. If you were to go down to the basement, when you walk down into the basement, you'll see that it had been reinforced because the house started to sag and other major items. We went out again to see if we can find people who could give us some kind of an idea, or maybe be interested in rehabbing the house, and then would be able to market it, or they would market it, whoever. And we spoke to 3 different companies. One was Pike Construction, who do this type of thing, and they came through, and they estimated that the cost would be somewhere around $1 million to rehab the house, to sell it as a luxury type mansion. Another gentleman, his name was Semmer Henny, came in, and he was brought in by one of the neighbors. And although he went through the house, and he thought the house had potential, but he also came back with a number of $750,000 to $800,000 to rehabilitate the house, to sell it as a mansion type house, and not just leave it alone. Naturally, Joe Forgione looked at the house and went through the house, and he really felt that the house had deteriorated and was so antiquated that he would have no interest in getting involved in, even in conjunction with the rest of his project.
Now, you mentioned the marketing efforts that you undertook to sell the house as a single-family house with the rest of the property. In your experience, were these normal marketing efforts, or were they extraordinary?
The majority is your normal marketing efforts that we go through, but there was extraordinary things like hiring the planner and hiring architects and reviewing it and bringing other people in to evaluate what the cost would be to renovate the house and to maintain the house. In many cases, everybody, the two people or two out of the three people that presented, that made offers, that went into contract, we convinced them that they should invest some money to show what it's going to look like, and they both expended a great deal of dollars to come up with different presentations so that they can go forward on the project, and they did a very good job in planning, but obviously planning and what the zone permits are two different things.
And do you have an opinion, a professional opinion, as to whether the property can be sold with the existing building functioning as a single-family house?
My opinion is that it can't be sold as a single-family house. I think that today the environment and it's just not conducive to that type of building. I think from when you start talking about $1 million, and basically the majority of the houses in the immediate area are selling at $500,000 to $600,000. I mean, you know, and maybe some lower and maybe some higher, but the honest to goodness truth is that this particular building, once we rehabbed it, if they just utilized $2 million as a number, and then went forth and have to put another $1 million into the building, you'd have a $3 million house in a neighborhood that doesn't warrant it, and I don't know that too many people will be willing to put their dollars and want to live in this particular neighborhood. There's just so much out there. And one very important factor here is the market has changed drastically. I mean, a while back, I think that there have been a lot of people that might have said, "Look, I'd like to live. I like South Orange. I want to live here. I'm willing to take a shot. I'll live in this neighborhood." It's not happening anymore, and people are not willing to put their money out.
I have another question.
Before you call another witness, do any of the commissioners want to ask a question of this witness?
I have a quick question. You said, excuse me, you said the property was under contract 3 different times.
That's correct.
The first one, it was for a development of 50 units.
No, the first developer started out, he was going to build 100 units.
First one was
100 units, and then when he came in with his proposal, it was approximately 150. I don't have those exact numbers, but those are rough numbers.
And the second contract was for 250 units.
It was for Chase Partners. They were going to, they came in and realized, thinking about 100 units, and then when they came back, they said if they can't build 250, they can't go forward.
And then for the third one, I'm sorry, that was, I didn't understand how many units that was for the third
That
contract.
was for 80 units.
80 units. But it was marketed as a single-family home.
We marketed as a single-family home, but we also indicated that there can be a possible subdivision for one-family houses.
Thank you.
Question for you. I'm looking at
Jeff, use the mic.
I'm looking at an exhibit that lists the advertising record, I guess, of what you did in the papers. And what I'd like to know is, out of these advertising, how many were advertised? How many times was this house advertised as a single-family house versus as a different use?
When we first started marketing the property, we marketed it exclusively as one-family houses. And then after a while, I don't know what you're looking at, sir, so I'm just telling you that after a while, we start marketing, realizing that no one was interested in a one-family house, that maybe we can get some house of worship or some type group like that would be interested in coming in and utilizing the group. We did have many inquiries from different groups. But again, their problem was they expected to walk into the building and be able to utilize it for that particular use. And when they walked into the building, they realized that they were going to have to make a major investment into the building.
It just appears to me from these ads that you have in here, I see one, possibly two ads that were listed as a single-family residence. The majority of the other ones were either as house of worship or cultural center or other uses. So I'm just trying to figure out how much, where you're marketing, Star and where it headed towards.
We market it as one family. We mentioned that I think we actually referred it to a mini mansion in some of these ads, but we market it in many of the newspapers, and whatever it is, we do get calls from brokers and other brokers and people calling us and asking us for us, and some people, and the only people that we're getting that want to live in South Orange are people that have a desire to live here. It's not exactly an area that people are going to come from Livingston or Montclair or another community to come down to South Orange.
Please.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. The property was marketed, the property with the mansion was marketed for $3 million. Previously, you had said that I'm wondering how you came about that appraisal to market it at $3 million.
The Mary Lawn, the board at Mary Lawn hired an outside appraiser. We didn't do that appraisal, and we put it on the market for the appraisal that they prepared. It was a professional appraiser that made up the appraisal, and the Mary Lawn and the Sisters of Charity made the determination that this is the value that we feel we can get the property. If I just may add that this was all about keeping Mary Lawn, the school, up and running, and they wanted the money from this to put it into the school.
Yes.
And were there comps? Did you pull comps when you put the price on the market?
Actually, they did the entire appraisal, sir. They did a very professional appraisal. Sure. That I would have to ask to release it to you, but because it's not mine to release.
I do have one additional question. Some of the ads that were provided in the application seem to indicate that it was a vacant lot for sale. Could you explain how this property was marketed as a vacant lot when there was an existing building on it? Because
well,
it was
actually,
the
the one lot, we started out by, as I mentioned before, we started out with just two lots that were both vacant. They weren't. The lot number 9 has the 2 tennis courts on it. That's a separate lot. Then there's the lot, I guess it's 3 next door. The lot 3 next door has the house, and what they originally were thinking of dividing off the back half of the lot and selling off the back half of the lot and not selling the house.
Do you know what the entire footprint of the lot is?
How many acres?
Size, yes.
It's approximately 3 acres, a little less than 3 acres.
The ad says 3-acre property, vacant lot, for $3 million. And I'm asking how it could be marketed as a vacant lot when there was a building on it.
Well, I'd have to look at it. I don't know why it would, that wasn't the intent.
In several of the ads that we were provided as well, the property was marketed as a commercial space. Is that correct?
Yes.
We're good here. Move to Ms. Gross. We're good.
Yes. Let's call Sister Joan back.
Good
evening.
Good evening.
Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State and spell your name, please, and give us your address.
Sister Joan Repka, R-E-P, like Peter, K-A.
R-E-P?
K-A.
K-A. Thank you.
My address is P.O. Box 476, Convent Station, New Jersey.
Sister Joan, what is your current position with the applicant?
I am the chair of the Board of Trustees of the Mary Lawn Corporation.
And so what are your responsibilities as chair?
Basically, as chair of the board, it's to oversee the policies that are made in the school, to try and find ways to secure financing so the school could continue, and to assure that the curriculum is in accord with all state regulations.
And prior to becoming chair of the board, what else was your experience?
I was involved in secondary education for 25 years. I also was involved in charge of a social service agency. I am currently the secretary of the Corporation of the Sisters of Charity and serve on the leadership team.
How long has Mary Lawn owned the property?
Mary Lawn purchased the property in 1935 to be used as an elementary school for boys and girls in the South Orange area.
And when was this use terminated?
In the 1950s, the convent was no longer used for an elementary school because they used the carriage house for the elementary school, and in the 1950s, when the new school was built exclusively for a high school, then the convent was exclusively for the sister residents who taught in the school.
And when was that use terminated?
I believe the sisters no longer moved out of the convent in August of 2011.
And why was it terminated?
There were only 4 or 6 sisters living in the house. It was much too large for them to be able to handle. As has been already mentioned, the facility itself needed a lot of help. The Sisters of Charity had invested a lot of money into doing repairs that were necessary for the safety of the sisters living there. The school was actually, by virtue of being a separately incorporated institution, was supposed to be providing the finances for the upkeep of the building, but they were not able to do that. And so the Sisters of Charity would, by virtues of grants or sometimes loans and sometimes just outright gifts, provided because we were concerned about the safety.
Now, you're aware that this is an application to demolish the building, correct?
Yes.
And is that the preferred course of action as far as the sisters are concerned?
Absolutely not.
And why not?
We never wanted to, that was never part of our discussion or our dealings. What we were interested in was selling that building and the property surrounding that building so that we could begin an endowment for to secure a future for the school.
And how long have you been trying to sell the building?
Probably since 2011, maybe 2010, 2011.
And Mr. Cupo testified as to prospective purchasers. Were you familiar with those prospective purchasers and the contracts?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And have you also, you and the sisters had meetings with village trustees and the Montrose Historic District residents to discuss sale of the building to either the township or to some affiliated group?
Yes. Beginning in the fall of 2011, when we began to see that when the people interested in the property were meeting resistance at Town Hall for trying to get either information about zoning or get information because they wanted to submit plans for development, Sister Barbara Ayers, who's the Director of Property and Lands for the Sisters of Charity, she and I met with Mayor Torpley to discuss possible use of the land, interest of the township in the land, and what would be some possible things that we could offer or look for the land to be used so that this resistance would be eliminated. Subsequently to that, I know that Sister Barbara and Mr. Cupo, and also one or two, at least I know Mr. Forgione, met with a small group of the Montrose Historic Society on more than one occasion to try and work out what for some reason had become misunderstandings. And adjustments were made in some plans as a result of some of those things. We also met with the town business manager. We tried to meet with whoever we could to try and come to some positive resolution on what we could do for this land. And again, I want to repeat that it was for the purpose of being able to sell it so that the school could continue.
And you indicated you were aware of the prospective purchasers, the inquiries, and indeed the contracts that were signed?
Yes.
And what is your understanding as to why those sales were never completed?
In some instances, it was because of what, after a contract was entered into, subsequent plans that the group wanted were not approved by the town. In some instances, some of the things that were suggested we did not approve of. In some offers of where we did not make contracts, we did not think that the group was suitable for the town, and so we would not pursue that. But in most instances, what happened is when the renovation of the building of the convent was involved, everyone said it was financially prohibitive.
And what will happen if the building cannot be demolished?
If we are unable to sell it, and we have to, obviously the school is no longer in existence, so there's no way that that entity can maintain that building. And the hardship that would be placed, the financial hardship that would be placed on the Sisters of Charity to maintain that would be virtually impossible for us to meet.
I have another question.
Commissioners, anyone have any questions at this moment?
Just give me a second. I did have a question. Actually, it's not important because the school's no longer in existence. It was about the school, but since it's no longer in existence, it's kind of a moot.
Could I still have a question for the Mr. Cupo?
Sure, and for the first witness as well, anybody, no one asks any questions there? If you have questions of the first
I
witness?
thought we were waiting till the end.
No, you can,
Okay.
before
Okay.
everybody else gets a crack at the whole bank of witnesses.
I think this is the end.
You get.
Right.
You go first.
Well, everybody else gets their chance.
Right.
Right.
Does anyone have any questions for Sister Rick?
Sister, I just wanted to ask, with the school no longer in existence, when your plans were originally to endow the school with the proceeds from the sale,
Yes.
Do you have other plans in mind now for the proceeds, how they would be used?
If we are able to sell the land, the proceeds would, most of it would repay the loans that the Sisters of Charity have put back in, but by virtue of the bylaws, whatever is gained from the sale of property goes into the ministry fund for like purposes in the congregation.
Any other questions for Sister Rick? No? All right, Sister, thank you. Any other questions for any other witnesses?
For Mr. Cupo, yes.
Mr. Cooper?
I was reviewing the ads that you provided. I know some of the commissioners already asked you some of the questions about the ads, but two of the ads in the May Bergen Record are for professional office building with ample parking and a retail end cap in the strip mall. And I'm wondering if those were included in error in here?
I'm sorry, I'd have to see what you're referring to, ma'am. It could be that you're looking at an ad.
Can you show the witness those ads?
Which one? This one?
Yes, that's this page. May 20th.
You have to speak into the microphone. These are, just to keep out, you have to speak into the sheets out when they sent them in. There's more than one ad, and we get them from, we have an advertising agency, and they just photocopy the ads, and those ads are not directly related to this.
Okay.
That's a,
Those two ads are not
I mean,
related.
they should have just not put them in, they should have crossed them out.
That's what I thought. And the list that you provided at the front of the ads, is that all of the ads that you used?
Well,
during the
I
whole
would-
period of time?
I don't know, I didn't provide those, Mrs. Swan provided them, who deals directly with the advertising agency. I'd assume that she, whatever they asked, or Mr. Gross asked her for, she gave him.
Okay, so for the period of there are about 30 weeks worth of ads.
Say again, I'm sorry?
If I read this correctly, there are about 30 weeks worth of ads for that period of time.
Are you referring to the sheet?
Yes.
You've got a property location, Maryland, South Orange?
Yes.
Yep, but they're not picking up the voice. I'm speaking.
Starting 10/17/2010 and ending 8/24/2012? I think the question was, are those all the ads that were placed in publications?
I'd have to really see that. I can get you an answer, but I don't know what you gave here. This is just a bunch of numbers to me with names of papers. I'm not sure what they gave you or how they got to where they got. I can get you a list of everything if you like.
I believe you're holding the sheet that you gave to us.
Right, well, and this is,
Oh,
okay, I'm not sure. I can't give you an answer. I'm not being evasive. I don't know.
Thank you.
If that's all the ads for.
Any other questions for Mr. Cooper?
Yeah, just one more thing about the marketing of this. I mean, I realize the house has got, sort of disrepair. None of the ads kind of speak to that. I mean, I think a lot of times with older homes, people say, oh, it needs of a repair or a huge handyman special, but, there's just no mention of that. And I've got to believe that, I just wonder if you found that effective, or how you guys addressed that when people did look at it.
I really think that we have a $3 million price tag on the property, and it's just not going to make it. We had to go out and find the people that would be interested in doing this, such as Pipe Construction and the other people that we went to that do this type of thing. They buy these houses, they rehab them, and they sell them.
Right.
I mean, it's not a handyman special that maybe you're going to go out or someone else is going to go out and say, I'm going to buy this, and my wife and my kids and I will fix it up as we get older.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Any other questions for any other witnesses?
I just want to clarify, you indicated that you did not appraise the property yourself? So the $3 million price tag was not by you?
No, the actual, we went in and just did a market study on the property in 2008. And we provided that information to them, and then they employed a professional appraiser that does nothing but appraisals, and did a full appraisal on it, and that's who actually determined the value of the property. He incorporated the house as well as the land.
Mr. Cooper, could you just tell me what the price of the Lot 3 and Lot 9 was? I missed that in your original testimony.
The two lots.
The two lots, the original, the ones that you did appraise.
The ones that we did appraise, one lot was, I think, the rear lot of Block 3 or Lot 3, we appraised at $800,000, and we rounded the numbers. And the other lot where the tennis courts were, we appraised at $700,000.
Thank you.
And did you say earlier that you did not believe a house would warrant a sale at $1 million or $1.5 million in Montrose? I don't understand what you were saying there.
What I did say that the surrounding neighborhood, we try to do some market value, some market studies on the surrounding houses in the surrounding neighborhood. And I found that most of the houses values, or what we felt would be a resale value or a sale value of, were somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000.
Mr. Cupo, I just am curious to know when in 2008 the property was appraised? Was it the beginning of 2008 or towards the end of the year? Do you remember?
I don't have their appraisal with us. When we did it, it was in April of 2008 that we did the value of those, and we did primarily, the value is done with your assessor, who gave us other comparables and other things as to what she felt the values were, and it was more of an information type thing to get a general idea, so Mary Lawn and the Sisters of Charity can make a decision whether they even want to do this. So they weren't sure.
But I think
Thank
the
you.
question was the appraisal that you were provided of $3 million. When was that provided to you?
Correct.
It was done between 2008 and September of 2010. I mean, I would assume that when it was completed, that was the that's not the appraisal. That's what we did from the information we gathered. But the actual appraisal, I can get you the exact date of it, and frankly, I'll ask them if they'll release it to you if you wanted to see it. I mean, we don't. But if it's not mine to give out.
Okay, I have a question for Mr. Rother, our counsel. Can the commission ask for information regarding the appraisal and how that came about?
Sure, of course.
Okay. I just think it would be helpful, since this expert witness on behalf of the of Mary Lawn does not have that information. I think it would be very helpful to know how that number was reached. Thank you.
I have a question, just specifically on several of the placements, ad placements that came late in the game that were in some rather unusual newspapers, including News India, Korean Times, and the Chinese World Journal. Is your experience that have you had success in the past with selling this type of property in this type of town in those publications?
I'm not clear what the question is. Can you please repeat it? I'm not clear what your question is.
Have you used those for other? Have you used those publications to try to sell properties such as this one?
The publications, yes, we do. We also do a great deal of direct mail to people that we have lists that we have and we acquire of people who we feel would be interested in these type of properties.
And your ad agency you mentioned probably made these recommendations, is that correct?
Well, our public relation people just prepare the ads and they put them in. We just give them the information as to what we want advertised, and they'll recommend the newspapers, or more often than not, most of it's done through the internet today. It's not there's not too much done through the press anymore.
Most of the ads you said were placed in these newspapers, and then you used several internet resources?
We have two, LoopNet and CoStar, that we utilize as our primary internet communication, where we advertise them on, and those type of things. We're members, and we submit everything that we get into them, and they put them in, and they go out to all the members, which is quite sizable. The exact number is in the tens of thousands that belong to it.
Do you usually list on the multiple listing?
Yeah, we would, in this particular scenario, we didn't use multiple listing because we began with just vacant land. We didn't begin with selling a house. And we, again, I don't feel that this particular house or this particular building warranted, it was going to be a one-family house that somebody was going to come along and buy this one-family house. I think the only possibility we had right from the beginning was finding someone, and there's people that do this, come in, buy the property, rehab the building, and then sell the building and market the building as a finished product. It's not something that someone's going to come in and walk into, because everybody that we talked to had indicated that they, even if they came in and did it, they didn't think there was any bottom line for them. The value would not be there.
Okay, so you didn't consider putting it on the multiple listing?
We didn't put it on a multiple listing. We did not. We are members, but we didn't put it on.
Anybody else? Good. Any questions for any other witnesses?
Oh,
Are we done? Oh.
I have a question about the testimony regarding buildings in historic districts.
So,
And I believe that was...
Mr. Jerry, honest?
What?
The preservation consultant, I think we'd like to hear.
Pronounce your name.
Terry, honest.
Tavares?
The is silent.
It's Terry Ann's, but that's fine. Sure.
Just call him Damon.
It's
You had
good to me.
mentioned that you felt this particular, I'm going to try to recap what I think you said, that this particular property was not overly significant to this historic district. Is that correct?
Well, I think I addressed that in two ways. The first way was whether or not the demolition of the building would affect the overall ability of the district to qualify as a historic district under the National Register of Historic Places criteria. And that is not the case. This one building, while it adds to some degree to the eligibility, it certainly, in every way, this district would still count as qualifying. The other way I qualified the significance of the building was whether I thought that the building, I said that I believe the building did qualify as a contributing structure. There's another designation which really has no official meaning, but it's required anyway, is whether or not it's a key contributing building, one of the most important buildings within the district. And while I think I'm on the fence about whether the alterations to the building and the alterations to the setting of the building have been changed to the extent that I would call it a key contributing building if I was preparing the district nomination, I would think a reasonable professional could go one way or another marginally, but I wouldn't want to be in the position of strongly defending either position, if that makes sense.
And the fact that it's on a bordering edge of the district would or would not have impact on that?
It doesn't necessarily affect whether or not it's a key contributing building or its overall significance, but it would make it easier for the district to exist as a consistent whole if the building wasn't there, because you could simply redefine the boundary of the district to exclude the property, because I believe it does pretty much border the boundary of the district.
You mentioned the word key contributing, and I believe you said that you're familiar with the National Registration document.
Certainly, yes.
And what does it actually state in that document as to whether this building is...
It does state that the building is a key contributing, yes.
Okay. And what would you describe the style of the architecture of this building?
It is generally Richardsonian Romanesque, which is as the nomination identifies it. The key thing is that stone first level and the large Romanesque arch that surrounds the principal entry. Also, the overall proportions of the building with regard to the roof and there are Romanesque buildings that are vertical in nature, but this horizontal type of building comes out of the tradition of the Boston architect Henry Hobson Richardson.
As you're familiar with the document, the National Registration application, are there any other Richardsonian Romanesque buildings in Montrose Park?
I have not reviewed them individually. It does mention the nomination lists a whole range of styles which can be found within the district. It breaks it, my memory is, up into two groups, which are predominant styles, and then it has a listing of assorted other things which have been built in the district, of which Richardson Romanesque is identified as one of the additional building types. But I'm not sure whether that was solely on the basis of this building or whether there are other examples of the district.
And could you define again key?
As I said, this is something which actually, when they first started really requiring this at the New Jersey Historic Preservation Office for districts, I kind of fought them a little bit over. They require the designation of key contributing resources. And part of the reason why I was a little resistant to this practice is because there's no procedural definition definition of a key contributing building other than it being an important building that helps define the character of the district. There's no clear lines for it, and there's no additional, in the regulations that do apply to National Register listed districts, there's no additional protection rendered to these things, regardless of whether it's a key contributing or a minimal contributing resource. It's the same level of protection afforded to it under all federal guidelines and regulations. Yes, sir.
A couple of things that you mentioned when you were talking about the building, particularly about the interior, was you said that some historic elements were removed from the interior of the building.
Yes.
You mentioned mantles and some other items.
Yes.
By those things being removed from the building, did that, in your opinion, devalue the property?
I can't really speak to the overall value and what effect it would have on the value of the property. Certainly there has been original contributing architectural fabric which has been lost, but I can't say when or how, because it was gone by the time I saw the interior.
Okay, and then you also talked about modifications to the exterior, and you had mentioned fenestration.
Yes.
Okay. My question is, would you have any knowledge of, was any of the original old fenestration in the building, was any of that historic element, such as stained glass windows or leaded windows or anything of that nature that may have been removed and then replaced with newer windows?
I'm not aware of it, but it's possible. I honestly don't remember with regard to that one point.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
You had said that you fought SHPO on the key contributing?
In a minor way. I mean, I'd have debates with various members of their staff over the process.
So you didn't file comments on the rules?
No.
Okay, thank you.
But if their definition of a key building is an important one, is it then your interpretation that this is an important building?
I would suggest, and as I've said, very, very, very marginally, that the building's stature and its presence probably very minimally qualifies it as key contributing. I would like to see a lot better street preservation of materials. I would love to have seen that original shingling on the second story of the roof. I would love to see, at least on the primary facade, all of the original fenestration in place. I mean, it's the street character that really defines the building from the extent of a historic district. That's the basic characteristics of the building are still there, but a lot of the things that would have made that building special have been diminished.
Can I suggest, so that this will work smoothly in this fashion, if your witnesses could stand around the podium and then those that are doing the examination can step up to this microphone in the center?
Sure.
Could I just ask for a brief recess so that we could use the restrooms?
I was going to suggest that anyhow, because I think the court stenographer here needs a break. Those fingers get tired after a while. Sure.
All right, so we'll recess for 10 minutes. Clock on the wall says, yeah, we'll do 9:30. We'll be back at 9:30. good to go. Please sit so we can continue here. All right. Mr. Gross, before we get started with the other witnesses and cross-examinations, we will need another hearing. And if you agree, August 14th is our next regular scheduled meeting. Is that an acceptable date?
That is an acceptable date, except that Sister Joan will not be available. So what I suggested in the break is perhaps she could be subject to questioning. Hopefully that questioning will terminate tonight, and then she wouldn't have to come back on the 14th. The other witnesses would be available.
We agree
if that's
that
acceptable.
That's acceptable to us. So, first off, if you have any questions for Sister Joan, we're going to start with her for cross-examination first. So, with that, call, Attorney Bauer.
Will Sister take the microphone over here, or just over here? Okay, so I can use this podium?
Yes.
Thanks. And then after this, the public will ask questions?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me? Yeah. I'll try to speak up. Sister, you heard a lot of questions from the commissioners about the appraisal and the market study. Most of them were directed to Mr. Cupo. Would you be willing to release both the market study and the appraisal that came after that as part of this application to the commissioners?
Yes.
Thank you. Do you know what did the market study identify a price for the property? And by the property, I understand that there's the tennis lot, which was identified as Lot 3, Lot 9, and that originally Mr. Cupo said he was trying to market it as vacant land. So in other words, he was proposing essentially to subdivide and hive off the back portion of that, the rear portion of the property that the convent is on. In whatever fashion your answer is, because I haven't seen the market study, what was the price of the property?
I don't have direct information on that. I have to go with what Mr. Cupo said. I was not chair of the board at that time, so I wouldn't have direct access to that. But I do know when we had to tear down that carriage house because of structural and health issues and other things there, we were interested in selling that back portioning off behind the convent over to the tennis courts, and the tennis courts are Lot 9, and 3 would have been back. Yes, it might have been, they were trying to sell it for single-family houses, I understand, so at that time. So I would have to go with whatever his numbers were. I don't have direct knowledge of that.
Okay, I understand. But what you're saying is the market study, it was, whatever price is in it was directed at the idea of developing single-family homes on those two portions of the, what I'll call the tennis area and the rear area.
Yes, but my other understanding of that is that there was little or no interest.
I understand that. I was just directing it to the price.
Right.
By the way, did you have a demolition permit for the carriage house?
Yes, I believe so. Or I don't know if it wasn't required. I believe when Sister Barbara spoke the last time that it was not required, but we did get all the things we needed from the town to do it. That I do know.
Sister, you mentioned what I believe were 3 meetings with what I'll describe as town officials. One was that Sister Barbara Ayers met with, as you described, Mayor Torpy, and the business administrator, I believe you said, met with Sister Ayers. Is that correct?
Sister Barbara Ayers and I met with Mr. Torpy in, if I'm mispronouncing his name, I'm sorry, in December of 2011. She, with Mr. Cupo, then had 1, 2, if not 3 meetings with representatives of the Montrose Historic Group. They also met with the South Orange trustees. And I believe some representatives of the planning board were at that meeting, those meetings. I was not present at them, but I was informed about those meetings in my position as chair of the board, and Sister Barbara's communicating with me.
I just want to try to clarify because I'm aware of one meeting that took place in approximately February of 2012 with 3 representatives of the Montrose Park Historic District Association, I believe 1 representative of South Orange Historical Preservation Society, myself, another trustee at the time, and Joe Forgione. Is that one of the 3
That's
meetings?
one of the meetings, but there was another one before that, and there was also another one where people asked to go through the building, to be allowed to go through the building, which was a next meeting after that trustees and planning board. I believe that's when you were at as well.
Okay. Let me just see if I can consolidate that. Do you remember whether, now you weren't at the meeting with Joe Forgione?
I was not at that meeting. I know that he brought his rendition of how he envisioned the property and the development of the property, and at the meeting that he was at, he did accept suggestions from people that they made about changing things. He did make those changes and went back. So it must have been 2 meetings that he was at. But that's all I can remember.
Okay.
Being told about.
Do you recall whether after that first meeting, which I just described the attendees at, that later that day, that was late in the afternoon, and that very same day, Mr. Cupo and Angela Swan arranged for the attendees, some of the attendees at that meeting, to go tour the house?
I do know that a group did tour the house, yes.
Okay.
I can't tell you exactly. I thought it was like 7:30 in the morning, but...
Yeah. And then the following year, this commission went to tour the building in March of 2013 at 7 in the morning or something
Correct.
like that. Okay.
Because there's no electricity, so it had to be done when there was daylight.
Right. And do you remember between those 2 visits that the mantle was removed, the banister was removed, the walls were taken out, those 2x4, the picture of the 2x4s in place of the banister, that all those things happened in between those 2 meetings?
The reason for that is when we were moving to get a permit to demolish the building, we tried to remove what we thought would be of value. And so those things are stored at Convent Station. They were not sold or done away with. We still have them. And if someone wishes to purchase the house, we can have them put back.
So in other words, those things are reversible?
We hope so.
Okay. That's all I have for the sister. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Hold on. Sorry about that. Apologize. Sister, during the period of, I think you described it as, or one of your witnesses described as 2010, 2011, did you have a minimum price that you would accept for the property?
At that time, I think it was, we were just doing those pieces up lot 3 and 9. I don't believe at that point that the house, because we didn't put the convent property, because the sisters didn't move out until August of 2011. So we didn't put that part of the house on for sale. Or it might have been started to be marketed, but not seriously.
Okay. Are you saying that only after the sisters moved out of the house that there was any marketing effort that included the property on which the house sits?
No, there was probably marketing before that because, again, the whole purpose of selling the property was to try and get money to do an endowment to save the school.
I understand.
So probably starting in 2010, that was all part of the plan and the vision for what we hoped would be able to save the school, which obviously didn't happen.
Okay. Regardless of whether your plan included saving the convent, getting somebody to rehab it, use it in any way, whether institutional or house of worship, single family, whatever, did the Sisters of Charity have a minimum price?
We had the price that the house was appraised at, that land and everything was appraised at. In some instances with some developers, that price went down significantly because of what would be involved in rehabbing the house or demolishing the house. If I can just say here, and it's not a direct answer to your question, but there was no thought of demolishing until they wanted to put the house on the historic landmark and that we would have to be required to maintain it. And we are in no position to be able to do that. That's what forced us to have to go for a permit. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here.
Just a sec, I have one other question. Going back to the meetings that you had with township officials, were there any writings associated with your, strike that, did you try to negotiate with the town, in other words, offer the town the property?
We did ask the town if they were interested in purchasing the property.
At what meeting did you do that?
One of the meetings with the mayor and with the trustees. And the answer was, no, they're not in a position to purchase it because they already have a historic property that they can't do anything with.
Was that communicated by you to them in writing or by them to you in writing?
No, that was verbal.
Do you know when that occurred?
It was in one of the meetings with those trustees because we also, then when we had a meeting with the town business manager, Barry, he talked about looking at Green Acres possibilities, but nothing was in writing. It was all just discussion.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions for Sister Jo? You can come forward, use the mic, state your name and address for the record, please. Whoever. Come on.
Hi, my name is Ed Moore. I live on 9 East Clark Place.
Oh, can you spell your last name too?
M-O-O-R-E.
And your address.
9 East Clark Place.
All right.
Sister, in today's testimony, you indicated you first started working with Mr. Cupo, it seemed like, back in 2008, when his firm came in and did a marketing study or a feasibility study on it. It wasn't a listing, but he appraised the property.
I was not directly involved at that time, but I believe that's correct.
Had you or the Sisters of Charity dealt with Mr. Cupo in the past?
Yes, I believe that we dealt with Mr. Cupo on properties in Hudson County, on 2 properties.
Were any of those properties, of historic in nature?
One was.
And what was the outcome of that, do you know?
It took a while, but it was successfully accomplished.
I don't know.
And those issues were more because of the town regulations and rules more than not having buyers. Just to be clear.
Okay, so the regulations of the town hindered the sale or helped it?
Hindered.
Most people, I don't know, I've sold about 8 or 9 houses as an individual, not mansions. Typically, most people say real estate is local, and typically when I've used brokers, usually someone from the community who kind of, knows the town, knows the marketplace, and sort of has an affection for the community. Did you, during your search for someone to represent you in the sale, did you consider any local realtors or any individuals in the community?
We had positive success with Mr. Cupo. He knew us, he knew our values. He was a person that the people at that time chose, and I have no problem with that. This property has been well publicized in this town. Everybody obviously knows it's available. Anybody who made any kind of an approach to us, we spoke with them. We made contact with them. I know that Mrs. Swan here, who's Mr. Cupo's assistant, personally called 2 or 3 people who contacted us from local areas. In some instances, they didn't respond after being contacted. So I personally said at one of the last planning board meetings that we had, where we spoke, anybody who was interested, come talk to us. We'll talk to people. It was not a closed entity by any means.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, good evening. I'm Janet Scrobe. I'm your neighbor behind you.
Hi, Janet. I remember you from the last time.
Thank you. I live at 425 Oast Avenue, and I have a couple of questions based on what I've heard. The one thing is, how long have you been at Mary Lawn? Can you hear this? Okay.
Excuse me, could you spell your last name for the record, please?
Skrobe.
Thank you.
How long have you been at Mary Lawn?
I never taught at Mary Lawn or lived there, but I've been on the board probably about 12 years.
12 years.
But only chair. This is my 2nd year as chair. Aren't I lucky?
Okay. When your address was asked, you indicated a post office box. Are you in New Jersey?
That's the standard address for the Sisters of Charity at Convent Station.
So you're at Convent Station?
Yes, I live at Convent Station.
I didn't think you lived in the post office box, but
it was the only way we could keep Convent Station as our postal address.
Okay.
And since we've been there 153 years, we thought it was a good idea.
That's a good idea, yeah. In reference to the carriage house, I was a little concerned because you indicated that you tore it down because of health reasons and structural reasons.
Well, it was, again, in disrepair. It hadn't been used for the school for a long time. Okay. It was a storage place, and we just had to, I was not directly involved in it, except having been on the board to know that it was that the decision was to tear it down.
So what was it used for before it was torn down?
Well, originally it was used for the elementary school in the 1940s.
I'm asking because it being torn down was a bit of a surprise to me. I'm not sure about the demolition permits or whatever occurred during that time, but I had no awareness until the bulldozers pulled up and it was torn down, and I'm across the street. And then I also know that there was an apartment upstairs and that people had lived in it, and I think he taught at the school, and I was concerned when you said health issues. obviously with
No, I was
dust.
more concerned because he had small children, and we didn't want them, because there was an auditorium in the basement and the stairs were no longer there. We were concerned about somebody getting hurt. So we obviously had him move out. And then when we were doing a plan, we did a study of the property and the buildings, because the school had a tremendous amount of things that needed to be done to repair it, leaks and things like that. When we did a study of the whole property, it was decided that the best thing would be to tear that down. And I know that they had to go to the town and get permits, because they had to get soil, they had to get the, the lead stuff, the asbestos, all of that
They
done.
got a soil disturbance permit to tear it down?
I don't like to object to the audience's questions, but I think this has gone pretty far. We're not here to discuss the carriage house, we're here to discuss the building on
We're
the
discussing
property.
the intent of the property, and I didn't bring up the carriage house. It was brought up before I came on the stand. And I'm a neighbor, I live behind.
If this doesn't go on much further, I think we can hear, just the
So what I'm
conclusion of
getting
this,
to-
but let's not go a lot deeper.
Okay, so what I'm getting
That
to in
don't-
reference to the carriage house is it was brought up that that was up for sale. And I want to ask if there was ever a for sale sign on the property.
No, the carriage house was never up for sale. The
Not
property on which the
property.
carriage house.
Right. So if that was up for sale, was there ever a for sale sign on the property?
I can't answer that, I don't know.
Okay, because I don't
But I don't think so.
I don't recall ever seeing a for sale
That's,
sign.
you're starting to give a statement now.
Okay.
You have to ask questions.
There was
Okay?
never for
You'll
sale.
be able to get up here
Okay.
later on and
Okay, I'll
tell
stop.
everybody what you saw or didn't see, okay?
That's fine, I got it. Okay. It's been said that the reason for selling the property was to sustain the school. So
That was the original intent.
Okay, so my question was the $3 million, however it was arrived at, how long would that sustain the school for? There's been no talk about how many students you had at the school and how long that $3 million would last, taking the school into the future. So is this a short-term fix, I guess is what I'm asking, or a long-term business plan?
Well, it was not a long-term business plan. It was an attempt to try and get a few more years while we developed a more aggressive and successful development department. However, concurrent with that, doing that, the enrollment of the school dropped. Was a steady pattern. So all of those things combined.
Right, which I, being behind you, noticed. In reference to the house that we're talking about, was there a maintenance plan, or what were the expenses per year? You wouldn't have been paying taxes, my assumption. Were you paying taxes?
We're tax exempt.
Right, okay. So you would have had a maintenance plan put together for the home? Expenses, maintenance, what you put in every year into the home to maintain it?
When the sisters were living there, they had their own budgets and whatever. Because the property belonged to the school was responsible for paying certain maintenance and repair things. When the school was no longer able to do that, that fell to the Sisters of Charity. First of all, because our sisters were living there. Secondly, because we did not want we didn't want it to fall into total disrepair.
Correct.
So a lot of major things were done regarding water infiltration and roofing and stuff like that. I can't say that there was a plan, but there was a study done that indicated all the things that would be part of a plan and that we would need the money, obviously, to do.
Okay, so within the past 10 years, how much money was spent on maintaining the house? Was there a maintenance budget? Every so many years, the roof has to be repaired, I'm going to say $250,000 in the last 6 years. On maintenance?
On repairs and maintenance and upkeep.
Did the Sisters of Charity add the siding onto the house?
That was done a long time ago. I don't know when, but I would say, I can't answer, I don't know when.
Okay, so you don't know if
It
they...
wasn't, I mean, I'm sure they did it, it wasn't a historic building, or they didn't think it was. So they did it to enhance the look and maybe for protection, I don't know.
Okay. Can you clarify that, please? The Sisters of Charity didn't know it was an historic building? Or the
Well,
Mary
I can't answer that. That would have been done by whoever was the superior of the house or the principal of the school. That would have been done on that level.
Okay, so can we get a date on when that was done? Would that be relevant to the...
You can ask the question.
Can we get a date on when that was done?
I don't know, and I would venture to say it would be very difficult to find out, because I don't think there's any record of that.
No record?
I don't think so.
Okay. Do you know the age of the heating system that was in the building?
Old. Very old.
When you talk...
Older than Tom. And I know I'm being facetious, but it's old.
It's probably equal to many other older homes in South Orange. You spoke before about... Now you maybe lose track. You spoke before about the insides of the house, and that I think the banister and all these parts are in storage and in Convent Station. Is that correct?
When the decision to make the house a local landmark and a historic whatever would require that the school and then eventually the Sisters of Charity have to maintain the house.
Correct.
And do it, and it was financially prohibitive, if not impossible. And then we had to apply for the demolition permit because that was our only recourse at that point, because if the property wasn't selling, it had been 2.5 years on the market, it wasn't selling. So the only recourse we had was to demolish it. One or two of the trustees recommended that we remove pieces that we thought might have value. Either value is in resale, not necessarily historic value, but that we might be able to sell to get something from. We had our contractor remove those items, and we do have them stored so that if we are able to sell the house, we would offer them back.
Was the stained glass included in that?
No. Stained glass in the chapel?
No, the stained glass at the stairway going up at the front of the building.
No, that was sold, and that the money from those windows were used to sustain the school for a year.
So parts of the school
basically to pay the salary of the teachers is what it did.
Okay. You indicated before the concern, and correct me if I'm wrong, you indicated the concern was that now that it was on the register, if that's how you referred to it, create a concern that you would have to now keep up the house.
That would have to be maintained, and structurally it's not sound. We had to put in reinforcing things in the basement to hold up the floor. And what would have to be done to maintain the property, maintain the house, it was not financially feasible for us.
What was your understanding of what that meant to be on the register? Why it would be different to maintain it differently on the register as opposed to normal maintenance that we all have to do in the town of South Orange?
Our understanding was that if it was on it was a local landmark, and the restrictions of historic preservation would require us to maintain it in the quality and the style to which it was originally built. We could hardly keep up with the regular maintenance of it. There's no way we could afford to do other things there that were necessary.
Where did you
Well, we
arrive
wouldn't,
at that?
I mean, it would be an empty building. We're not going to maintain an empty building.
Yeah, we don't have to maintain an empty building.
No.
But where did you arrive at that conclusion that you would have to like restore or make better the home that you have?
That was the understanding that we had of what it meant to be on the historic register.
I guess I'm trying to find out where where
That's what was communicated to us, or that was our understanding.
from,
From what we read, from what people have told us.
so what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, your understanding was that being on the register meant you had to perform undue maintenance or repairs or something extraordinary, as opposed to just the ordinary maintenance that could or couldn't be sustained. And with all your...
We couldn't even do the ordinary maintenance to keep up, because there's no ordinary maintenance. Every maintenance item in there is extraordinary.
Right.
So there's just no way we could do it.
Did you obtain legal counsel to verify what you had to do to maintain the house, to verify your understanding of what it meant to be on the register?
The short answer is no.
Okay. So if I make a summary...
Let me just go back to the original
Yeah.
point. It was never our intention to demolish. That was never our original intention. It came about because of what we understood from what people said to us would be required of us if this designation happened. That's all I can tell you. I can't tell you any more than that.
Are you aware that when the siding was put on the house, that it was already on the national and state register, which has much more impact than the local register?
I may not have been alive when they put the siding on. I certainly wasn't involved in the division. I certainly wasn't involved in the decision, so I can't answer that.
Okay. Does the Sisters of Charity have a real estate arm, or is everything done locally by each group? I don't really know the extent of the Sisters of Charity.
Is that a question for them, or would it be for Mr. Cooper?
No, I think she's Sisters of
I
Charity.
can tell you we do not have a real estate arm. Things keep going, we're not going to have arms or legs.
Okay.
But what I can tell you is that Mary Lawn is a separately incorporated institution,
Okay.
which means that it is responsible for its own financial, for its own continuation health. And the Board of Trustees is the one that is given the responsibility of making sure that that happens. That's the answer to that question.
Okay, so clarification, is it Sisters of Charity that own the home, or Mary Lawn that owns the home?
The Mary Lawn Corporation
Owns the home that we're talking about?
owns the property and the school. It's a separately incorporated institution.
Okay, so...
The Sisters of Charity support it because it's our ministry, meaning that's the work that we
Okay,
do
so
in
there's a
education.
connection. Okay, all right.
That's where the connection is.
All right. I think that's all. Just give me 1 second to... Okay, thank you very much. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Okay, is there anyone else that has any, okay? Please state your name and address and spell your last name for us, please, for the record.
Hi, I'm Ruth Walters, W-A-L-T-E-R-S. I live at 73 Montrose Avenue, right across the street from the school. I have 3 questions.
Okay.
I'll try to keep them easy. My first one is very simple. What is the square footage of the home?
8,000 plus feet.
8,000 square feet.
Square feet.
Okay. And I trust, well, that would be for you. That was included in the marketing. The council, to my left, asked a question regarding the discussions with the developers when you were in 3 separate contracts. And she mentioned that you discussed lowering the price with some of the developers in order to take into consideration money necessary to repair, renovate, rehab, and so forth. And can you tell me what that price was?
Let me just clarify. That was one developer who, it was a situation where for every, it was a price that he would give us for a certain number of units, and then if the town allowed a few more units for every unit that was allowed, there would be money added so that it would come to the original price of what we were asking for. But that never happened because
Sorry, I
he
don't think
could...
I understand that.
Well, let's say he was going to get 25 units, let's say he was going to get 80 units to build. If he could then get 10 more units, it would be X number of dollars for every unit, so the price would, we would get that much more. But that never went anywhere because...
And what was the price for the 80 units?
Can I have to answer that? I think it was 2.5 or 2.3, something like that.
So would you say that that was the lowest price at which the property was discussed?
That was without keeping the main building. That was
That was just for land?
Right.
That was not for the property itself? Okay. In any of these discussions during the marketing, was it ever brought up what would happen to the school? Should the school close, since you clearly were having some financial difficulties, which spurred this entire exploration? When you marketed the home as a single-family home, did anyone say, well, what's going to happen to the school next door? Or when you were marketing it as a commercial space? Did that ever come up?
No one was interested in the school, quite frankly. I'll be blunt.
No one was interested in living next to a school?
No one ever brought up the school except in the point of saying, well, if we could have that school, we could do X, Y, and Z.
And did you explore that possibility?
No, not until after we made the decision to close the school. Our first thought, our first desire was the continuation of that school because it was a good school, it was doing good things, but confluence of perfect storm just didn't happen.
Okay. That's it for me.
Thank you. Anyone? Okay.
Hi, Christopher Krecky, K-R-E-C-K-E. I live at 70 Ralston Avenue. Good evening, sister.
Good evening.
You said that you testified that it was never...
Can you lift the mic up just a little more?
Sure. You testified that it was never your intention to demolish the building, the convent, and that decision was only made after your concern grew about the passing or the establishment of the Historic Preservation Commission. Why then was the property being marketed by Mr. Cupo as vacant land appropriate for the development of multifamily apartments?
I think you have to ask Mr. Cupo then. I don't know how this witness could possibly know that.
Can you save that for Mr. Koopa?
Well, does the real estate agent not work for the Sisters of Charity?
I do not believe that it was, the portion that was being sold as vacant land was the two lots that we talked about, 3 and 9. The tennis court piece and the part where the other house used to be. It was not the entire property. So that's a misunderstanding.
Okay, so then the marketing for the property only including the convent began after you were aware of the potential for the Historic Preservation Commission to be established?
No, the marking of property of the convent and that property began in 2011. Okay, it began, and that was when we were trying to sell the house so we could get the money for the school. So we're trying to keep it together. It then, when they it was at least a year, they weren't successful. Prior to that, October 2011 is when we made, 2012, excuse me, is when we made the decision to close the school. So for a year, there was very little movement, or contracts were entered into and then they were broken or changed or whatever.
Okay.
People change their minds.
Sure. You also testified, or Mr. Cupo testified, that you've been marketing the property for sale for a number of years. Did you ever have discussions, or are you aware of any discussions that you or any of your other sisters had with Mr. Cupo about lowering the price from a marketing perspective, as opposed to just during negotiations with potential developers?
We have had all of those discussions.
Are you aware of why the decision was made to never publicly lower the sale price on the property in an attempt to actually sell it?
I just have to say to you that based on the conversations that I was engaged in with Mr. Cupo and with Sister Barbara, who was the principal person who involved with the sale of property for our congregation, that every attempt and any and every request about the property was pursued.
But
and
you're not
various discussions were had about what would be the best way to do it.
But you're not aware of any discussions where the price, the public price, as listed in advertisements, was to be lowered to potentially encourage additional buyers to come to the table?
I have no direct knowledge of that.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean it wasn't had.
Okay. Since the school is not going to continue, unfortunately, does that, in your opinion, does that change the necessity to demolish the convent? That need no longer being there?
No, because now we have 2 empty buildings that we have to maintain.
If I were to tell you that the requirements under the existing Historic Preservation Commission did not add any undue burden aside from potentially delaying the demolition of a property, would that change your opinion about whether the speed with which you would want to attempt to demolish the property?
Let me just repeat again. It has never been our intention to demolish the property. If we can find a buyer who is interested in the property with the house, we will sell it to them. We would love to do that. Believe me, this is not fun. We still have to maintain 2 properties. Still an incredible burden on us. That's all I can tell you. If we can get the whole thing with getting the right to demolish is that if we do sell the property, in the future, whoever has it needs change, they want to expand, they need to have certain rights to be able to do things, okay? So it makes it, having the right to do that, which we believe is our right since it's our property, we think will make it easier for us to negotiate and for the future, we hope.
So,
but again, I repeat, it has never been, it is still not our desire to demolish.
okay, then what, just out of curiosity, you think having the actual permit, the approved permit to demolish the property is a tool to enhance your ability to sell the property?
Well, if anybody who's looking at purchasing the property is reading the papers and seeing what we have to endure, I think yes.
All right, that's all. Thank you.
I can't be any more honest than that.
Any other questions for Sister Jo?
I just need to tell you, the sisters have to be home in bed by 10:30. Because prayer at 5:15 is really early. Oh.
That's the boss speaking.
Hi, my name is John Sullivan. I live at 101 Vos Avenue. Sister, I was wondering if you could give us a guesstimate of how many students the Sisters of Charity have educated at this property over the years.
Well, multiply the years the school's was there by about 200. So 78 years times 200.
Okay. Has the tuition that's been paid over the years generally covered the cost of the maintenance of the property and the schools?
In the early years, yes.
later years?
In the last 10, 12 years, no.
Significantly under?
Probably more than that. Yes, significantly.
Was the property, at the time the Marilawn Corporation or the Sisters of Charity purchased the property, was it on any historical list or designation at the time in 1935?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I can tell you that we paid $20,000 for it and had to take out a loan and a bond.
But at the time you bought it, it was on no historical
No.
list.
Not that I'm aware of.
I've known numerous women that have gone to Marilawn. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the Sisters of Charity for the contributions they've made to South Orange over the years.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Sister Joan? One more, please come up, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name's Mary Beth Saccone. I'm not a South Orange resident, I'm a Maplewood resident, but I'm an alumna of Marilawn, as well as having taught at Marilawn. And I have one question for Sister. In addition to all of the expenses for maintenance of the two buildings and the cost of educating the girls over the course, and the boys over the course of the last 78 years, to what extent do you think that you underwrote salaries over the past 10 years?
Tell me, say that again.
To what extent do you think that you helped to underwrite salaries for all of the teachers over the past 10 years?
For the last 5 years, we probably exclusively paid, the Sisters of Charity probably exclusively paid the salaries.
Thank you.
Sorry? Excuse us, for the record, can you come back up and give us your name again?
Mary Beth, and it's Ciccone. I'm a graduate of Marilawn, as well as having taught there from 2007 through 2010, so I'm privy to a lot of the discussions that were ongoing, particularly with regard to the building that was the carriage house, which was in absolute disrepair.
Thank you. All right, any more questions for Sister Joan? All right, Mr. Gross.
I think we agreed that we would adjourn this hearing until August 14th without the necessity of any further notice.
Yes, we do.
All individuals who have any interest in this matter should come back on that date, because there will be no further notice of these proceedings.
It's a regularly scheduled meeting for the board, and it's on the calendar and it's posted, so we agreed that that would be a perfect time to continue this. That's it? All right, so till then, meeting adjourned.
Sister Joan, you can take the sisters home.